My name is Bev Leno. I'm 34 years old, and a year ago I weighed 229.8 pounds.
Born June the 12th, 1980. She made me miss lunch because I went into labor at noon, so food already in her life. She had her health issues. We spent time at sick kids, and that was not pleasant.
She's always had a weight problem.
She knew that she had to do something, and she just didn't.
I was getting to a point where I just did not want to be heavy anymore. I've always been heavy. I was tired of being heavy. I was tired of my family making excuses for me being heavy. I just wanted to do something different. I looked at the Slim Band. Realistically, it just wasn't for me. I just wasn't comfortable having my stomach shrunk down to the size of nothing for the rest of my life and not maintaining a normal life. There's all the fad diets that you see advertised everywhere. Again, you think about it, but you just don't have the motivation to do it until the push comes to shove. And I just finally got it in my head that I needed to do something. I could not go on the way I was anymore. Bottom line, I couldn't do my job, and my career means a great deal to me. Mentally, I was extremely unhappy. Mentally, just exhausted with life, feeling like I had no energy, dragging myself down. My hips hurt, my knees hurt, everything hurt, and I just generally was not feeling very good about myself at all. I ended up starting on January 15th, 2014. I started the Herbal Magic program. I had been in on January 11th for a pre-consultation just to see what the program entailed, cost, food. I didn't want to sign up for something that I didn't feel was realistic. We had a vacation coming up in February, and I think the reality started crashing in that, hey, obviously I don't have a beach body that's ready to go. And it was just that day, it was like this feeling of rightness came over me and said, this is the time, you're finally ready to do this, let's do it. I signed that day, and the only reason I started on the 15th was that I had to go back to work for 2 days. So we picked the 15th as the first day that I was going to be home. The first week I was on Herbal Magic, I actually had them give me menus because that was the easiest way for me to get myself into a pattern, was knowing, hey, breakfast, lunch, dinner, this is what I should be eating. So for the first week, I actually set up a spreadsheet and tracked everything that I was going to buy, everything that I was going to eat, on top of keeping it in the journal, because of course part of any of these programs is actually keeping track of what you eat. But making grocery lists for the first 3 weeks in Excel and basically breaking it down by food groups. Here's my fruit, here's my veg, this is how much I'm going to buy, this is what I'm going to eat. And just getting myself into that routine for the first 3 weeks, which is the most critical of anything that you do, helped tremendously. And then once you established a routine, it was so much easier to follow. I didn't miss the other foods as much as I thought I would. It was literally January 15th, you committed to the fact that I am not going to eat this stuff.
Well, when I found out that you wanted to lose 100 pounds, I was a little taken aback. It's a heck of a goal for anybody to try to achieve, especially in such a limited time frame. But knowing how motivated she is, and seeing her set goals for herself and do it, I thought, well, hey, if anybody can do it, Buff will be the one to do it.
In my first week, I lost 8 pounds. And it was more like, oh wow, this is really easy to do, and then you get it in your head like, oh, the rest of this is not going to be easy, right? Because the whole week before you're eating a whole bunch of bad stuff, and then it's like you're cutting everything off, and you're finally eating the way that you're supposed to nutritionally, and following the food guide and different things that you tweak as you go along. And it was about 3.5 weeks that I lost the 10 pounds. It was right before we went on our Daytona trip, and it was just, wow, I can do this. Like, this just isn't a one-off thing. It was just time to go, and go time. And once the first 10 came off, it was, I know I can do this.
It was the beginning of February, and we had planned this 2-week-long odyssey to Florida and Georgia, ultimately to go see the Daytona 500 And then we had managed to get in some time to actually go to Savannah, Georgia, which is one of our favorite places on the planet. And she called me and said, so we're gonna have to stop a few more times than you'd probably like on the way. I'm going to need the bathroom a lot more often. And immediately I thought, what, are you pregnant? And she said, no, I'm on this weight loss plan, and of course I've got to drink a lot of water. And I didn't really know what to say. That's a lot of weight. How are you doing this? Is it safe?
In February, when we were at Daytona, it helped when I was traveling with somebody who was pretty intense on going to the gym every day that we could when we were at our hotels. We survived the Daytona trip because I had planned it out. Okay, we know we're going to eat these days, and I absolutely refused to feel bad about it.
Buffy was pretty good at keeping on track when we were in the US. We had gone through in the previous week and had figured out what restaurants we were going to go to, and then had gone through the online menus, and had basically, when we sat down at the restaurant, when we finally got there, we knew exactly what we were going to order. And of course we had a few cheat days mixed in there too, because there was no way I was going to Savannah, Georgia and not having a proper piece of pecan pie. And she really wanted some key lime pie, and we were not disappointed.
That's some good sourdough. I love bread. There it is. Key lime pie. Nothing wrong with that. That's some good shit. When we're drilling, the hours are established. You can only work certain periods of time. So I started getting up at 5 a.m. and started going to the gym at the hotel. And at the beginning, it was 20 minutes on the treadmill at one of the lowest speeds possible, and I thought I was going to die. And then you just worked your way up, pacing yourself as you go. And with the longer hours, I found it easier to adjust to the transition. So I was working 12-hour days, but I was getting up at 5 a.m. to do my workout routine in the morning. If I waited until the evening, I knew I wasn't going to do it.
It was 2 months in. She started in January, and she come in here in March, 2 months after she had started, and the first thing I noticed was her face was thinner. And I took a look at her and I said, you've lost weight. And then this is when it all started, that she got fed up and she was going to do something about it. And her goal was 100 pounds. And my first thought was, holy cow, that's a little much, but if that's your goal, go for it.
I wasn't just too sure whether she could do it, but knowing her, I figured she likely would.
When I got to April, I was at the 30-pound loss, and I ended up having a brief hospital stay just for some digestive issues that were non-related to the Herbal Magic program. It was something that's pre-existing. And once I got out of that, as anybody who goes through a bad experience, you just want to say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go back to eating all the stuff that I did. And I remember eating a bag of cheese popcorn, and I ate it and felt great. And then after I put my book down, because I was reading a book when I was eating at the same time, and I put the book down, and you kind of like come back into focus here, and it was, it might have tasted good, but I don't feel good, and I don't want to feel that way anymore. So that totally minimized any thoughts whatsoever of me going back to that way. It refocused me, it got me back in the right direction. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't have a slice of pizza or some chips or something that's bad for you, but if you get it in your head that it's a treat, and you don't feel bad about it, you pick yourself up the next day and you go on with it. You don't do anything wrong when you eat that sort of stuff. It's just not meant to be a lifestyle.
If she was going to be in London, she would take over my kitchen on Sunday and pack food. And it would be 3 hours of, you could hear rustling in the kitchen, the frying pan. She had her little scale so that she could, I presume it was for a 4-ounce patty or whatever she was trying to cook. And she would get the measuring cups. She didn't do any dishes, by the way. That was my job, but that's okay. And she would have all the meals lined out.
For the longest time, Buffy didn't tell anybody what she was doing. She wouldn't post on Facebook. She wouldn't post any pictures of herself. What she did do was every week she had her weigh-in, she would actually text me and tell me how much weight she had lost, how many inches she was down, and then we'd have a conversation about what she ate that week, how she was feeling, all those types of things. So it may not have been public, but it was between the two of us, and I felt with each passing week that she was gaining more confidence in herself and her ability to be able to do this. And that was amazing to see, because for so many years she knew that she had to do something and she just didn't. She didn't care enough, and now I could see that she cared.
After BJ and her had been down to Florida, she had bought some jeans, and BJ had talked her into buying a size or two smaller to give her the incentive to lose weight. And they were a pair of jeans, and on the pockets they had sparklies. So the one day she was here, and I said to her, I said, "Oh, you've fit into these jeans, you've lost more weight." And she said, "Yeah," and she was walking away from me. And all of a sudden, she kind of kicked out her hip, threw her head over her shoulder, and took her hand and rubbed her ass and said, "Yes, I've lost more weight."